She left me in a hospital bed, stitches still fresh, for dripping into my arm, like I was nothing but a stranger she'd accidentally loved. That's how it ended. No whispered goodbye. No fight. Not even a text. Just emptiness. A hollow bed. A vanished woman. And a checking account that had bled out faster than my ruptured appendix. You never really think it'll happen to you, you know. The betrayal. The coldness. You see it in movies, some poor guy wakes up and realizes the woman he thought loved him was just using him. But you tell yourself, I'm smarter than that. She loves me. We're building a life. But Amanda? She was always 2 steps ahead. No. 5. I met her at a tech mixer in Midtown. Me, in a second-hand suit, nursing a flat Coke and trying to pitch my software consultancy. Her. In a red dress that probably cost more than my laptop. She was radiant, confident, said she liked humble men. I thought it was a compliment. It wasn't. She was a recruiter for C-suite executives. Spoke in polished tones, the kind that made you feel small without realizing it. Said she hated the elite, but always managed to mention her Brown degree, her Hampton summers, her restaurant family dynasty. I didn't care. I was flattered. I was lonely. She moved in after 6 months. Said it made sense to share space and finances. And so, like the idiot I was, I handed over keys, passwords, and trust like they were free samples. I thought I was building something real. We had routines, Wednesday Thai takeout, Sunday Netflix marathons, long walks through Rittenhouse Square like we were a couple out of some indie romance film. She started saying things like, maybe we should buy a place. I believed her. So we opened a joint account. Started saving. I even cut back on my Starbucks runs to squirrel away more. I was proud. Planning. Dreaming. Then I got sick. A blinding pain in my side while debugging a client's e-commerce platform. I barely made it to urgent care before passing out. I remember the nurse asking, "Do you have someone we can call?" Of course, I said Amanda. She texted back, "On my way. Hang tight, red heart." That was the last message I got. I went under the knife alone. Emergency appendectomy. When I woke up, she wasn't there. When I called, it went straight to voicemail. By the time I was discharged 3 days later, she'd blocked me on everything. But that wasn't even the worst of it. No, the real betrayal came when I opened my banking app. 0. Not a glitch. Not a hacked transaction. Cleaned out. All our savings. Every dime we'd put aside for a down payment. Gone. Vanished into a ghost account she'd set up months ago, right under my nose. That's when I realized, Amanda never loved me. She studied me. She calculated me. And then she executed the plan like a corporate acquisition, efficient, bloodless, and final. I spent 2 weeks in a daze, sleeping on a friend's couch with stitches that still throbbed every time I thought of her smile. And then one day, I saw a photo. Amanda. In Turks and Caicos. Wrapped around some hedge fund creep, champagne in hand. Engaged. She hadn't moved on. She'd upgraded. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not in a wild, vengeful scream sort of way. No. It was quiet. Ice cold. A voice inside whispered, "Take everything back." Not the money. Not even the pride. Something bigger. Her power. Her peace. Her illusion of invincibility. Amanda thought she'd left a weak man behind. She was wrong. She left behind someone with nothing to lose. And men with nothing to lose. They learn to plan. I grew up in the Rust Belt quiet of Scranton, Pennsylvania. You know the type, broken sidewalks, smokestacks, steel hearts. My father died when I was 10. One moment he was underneath a customer's truck fixing the transmission, the next, a jack slipped and crushed his ribs. We buried him with a wrench in his casket. After that, it was just me and my mom. She worked nights as a trauma nurse at regional hospital. I used to lie awake at night, listening to the front door creak open at 3 a.m., watching her kick off her shoes, hair stuck to her face with someone else's blood or tears. She never complained. Just showered, microwaved coffee, and asked how my day was. That's the kind of woman she was, never needed luxury, just dignity. From her, I learned how to endure. That's why I never chased wealth. I chased stability. I put myself through Penn State on scholarships and part-time jobs, majored in information systems, and graduated without a dollar of family help. Every cent I earned felt like armor. By 28, I had a solid career as a software consultant. Not flashy, but consistent. I liked patterns. Logic. Predictable outcomes. Life made sense when you could debug it like code. Then Amanda happened. I met her at a tech mixer in Manhattan, a rare weekend trip paid for by the firm. I was presenting a workflow demo, and she approached me afterward with a cocktail in one hand and confidence in the other. She had that Upper East Side accent that made every word sound expensive. Told me she worked as an executive recruiter, placing high-level tech talent with Fortune 500s. She said she liked how grounded I seemed. Looking back, I think what she really liked was the contrast. She was the kind of woman who wore silk robes on Sundays and thought brunch was a spiritual practice. I was the guy who still used coupons at CVS. But we clicked, somehow. At least I thought we did. Within 6 months, she moved in. That should have been my first warning sign. Amanda had a condo in Midtown. But she said she was tired of fake people and soulless views. My apartment was in Queen Village, nothing fancy, just a 4th-floor walk-up with creaky wood floors and a tiny kitchen. I offered to split the rent 50/50ths. She agreed without hesitation. But then came the passive comments. This place smells like someone's grandpa. Do your towels always feel like sandpaper? Your couch gives me depression. I laughed it off. Love means compromise, right? So I upgraded. Better furniture. Nespresso. I even started ordering meal kits so she wouldn't complain about poor people pasta anymore. Soon, my apartment wasn't mine anymore. It was hers, with my name still on the lease. But it wasn't just the physical changes, it was the psychological ones. She made me question myself. Said I was too uptight about saving. Mocked my habit of spreadsheeting our expenses. Called it cute that I worried about money even when she could buy a $400 dress on a whim. I wanted her to feel like an equal. But she wanted to feel superior. Still, I stayed. I told myself love was work. And she had moments that seemed real. When she laughed at my dad's jokes. When she curled into me at night and whispered about wanting a family someday. When she said I was the only man she trusted. That's when she suggested the joint account. We're building something together, she said. Why not have our savings reflect that? I hesitated. But Amanda made it seem like the next logical step. She deposited 10 grand the first week. I matched her over the next few months. Before long, we had a nest egg. She said we'd use it for a down payment on a house once we got married. I should have paid attention to the way she said, once we got married, like it was a detail she hadn't quite decided on yet. But I ignored the gut feeling. That voice that sounded a lot like my mom whispering, don't give people more than they're willing to lose. At work, things were steady. I got promoted to lead project analyst. Amanda didn't even blink. Finally, she said, sipping her imported Pinot. Now maybe you'll get a car that doesn't squeal like a dying cat. She never saw me as an equal. She saw me as a fixer-upper. Still, I tried. Every day. I showed up. I planned date nights. Took her to see her favorite indie bands. Let her parents insult my humble background during their rare, awkward visits and just smiled through it. Because I believed she'd stay. Because I believed I mattered. Until the hospital. I collapsed at work. It was appendicitis, but complicated. I was unconscious for hours. Alone. Hooked up to IVs and monitors, doctors asking who to contact. I gave them Amanda's number. She told the nurse she was busy and couldn't come. They had to call my emergency backup, my boss. Not my girlfriend. Not the woman who lived with me, slept next to me, and told me she loved me last week. When I got out, everything was gone, the money, the home I built with my own hands. I wasn't just abandoned. I was erased. That's when I knew, Amanda wasn't a mistake. She was a predator. And I had one choice left, to become the one thing she never expected. Calculating. You never forget the moment you realize you've been played. Not just lied to, but used, gutted, left hollow. For me, it happened in silence, sitting in the dark, staring at my empty bank account while my stitches still itched under my hospital gown. I was discharged at noon. No one came to pick me up. I waited on the curb for half an hour, half expecting Amanda to pull up in her silver Tesla, sheepish, maybe apologetic, with some excuse that would make the whole thing a misunderstanding. But nothing. I called. Straight to voicemail. Again. And again. By the time I walked through the door of our apartment, I already knew something was wrong. The place had been stripped. Her side of the closet, empty. Bathroom shelf, her skincare products, gone. Jewelry box, books, even the plants she claimed were her children, gone. The bedroom felt smaller, echoing. Just my things remained, my laptop bag, 2 suits, and the flannel throw blanket my mom crocheted for me in college. But the real punch came when I opened my banking app. Joint savings, 17 cents. Personal checking, minus $38.00, overdraft. I froze. Blinked. Hit refresh. It wasn't a glitch. I sat down on the edge of the bed, adrenaline crashing into my chest. My jaw locked as I opened the transaction history. One massive withdrawal 3 days ago, $22,000. Labeled, Transfer to Business Account, Aurora Digital Consulting LLC. I had never heard of that company in my life. My stomach dropped. I opened her LinkedIn. Nothing new. I checked her Instagram. Gone. Deleted. Facebook. Same. Even her email bounced. She hadn't just ghosted me, she'd nuked her entire online footprint. I called Chase Bank immediately, explaining the account, the transfer, the company name. The representative, polite but robotic, said that because Amanda was a joint owner, it wasn't fraud. Just a legal withdrawal. I argued. Begged. The woman on the line repeated herself like a script. You willingly gave her access to the funds. I understand it's upsetting, sir, but legally, there's nothing we can do. I remember whispering, she waited until I was unconscious to gut me. I filed a police report anyway, even though I knew it was futile. The officer on duty barely concealed his indifference. Sounds like a civil matter, he said, scribbling lazily on a clipboard. Get a lawyer. I did. I met with 2. The first was a high-profile guy in Manhattan, $400 per hour. He looked at my case for all of 5 minutes before shaking his head. You gave her consent. Joint accounts are dangerous that way. Unless you can prove coercion or premeditated fraud, you're out of luck. I didn't have that kind of evidence. Hell, I didn't even have a text from her admitting what she did. But I had something better. Motivation. I spiraled for a few weeks. Couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept reliving the moment in the ER, calling her, hearing her say, "I'm coming, babe. Just hold on." Those words echoed like a curse. She knew I was going under the knife. She knew I wouldn't be awake for days. And that's when she chose to disappear. I replayed our relationship in my head like a crime scene. All the red flags I ignored. The time she offered to consolidate our finances after I got a bonus. The moment she asked for my social security number for credit score stuff. The way she dismissed my idea of getting a lawyer for the savings account. She planned this. Not just the exit, but the extraction. She had access to everything. My financial info, my passwords, even my Apple Pay. In hindsight, it was textbook manipulation. She love-bombed me for a year, slowly made me dependent on her emotional approval, then turned cold, gaslighting me when I questioned her. I'd come home late from work, and she'd be on the couch, scrolling Instagram, wine in hand, telling me I was too sensitive or projecting. She'd started mocking my job, calling it white-collar labor. Said I lacked vision. Meanwhile, she networked with VCs and influencers and talked about exit strategies, like life was a pitch deck. I thought we were a team. She thought I was a stepping stone. And her replacement for me? I found out through a mutual friend's Instagram story. A boomerang clip of Amanda on a yacht, clinking glasses with a guy I recognized from an old group dinner. His name was Bryce. Hedge fund baby. Drove a McLaren. During that dinner, he asked if I was the freelancer boyfriend. Amanda laughed. Not quite. He works at a tech help desk or something. I laughed too, pretending it didn't sting. What Amanda didn't realize was that I had nothing left to lose. And that's when people like me become dangerous. I started researching. Every company she'd worked with. Every article she'd been mentioned in. Every guy she dated before me. One of them, Mark Kessler, had written a Medium post about financial abuse in Silicon Valley dating culture. He never named Amanda, but the timeline matched. He described being drained emotionally and financially by a woman who weaponized intimacy. Another ex, David, left a review on a now-defunct Yelp page for one of her father's restaurants. Watch your wallet. And your heart. I reached out. Carefully. Discreetly. Most ignored me. One didn't. Mark. We met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. He wore a beanie and had eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in a year. She did it to you too, huh? He said, before I even sat down. I told him everything. He nodded through most of it. You're the third guy I've met in 5 years. Third? I asked. There are more. But they're scared. She settles everything out of court. Threatens defamation suits. Her dad has a legal team on retainer. That's when I realized this wasn't personal for her. It was business. A pattern. A system. A calculated destruction of people like me. But patterns have one fatal flaw. They're predictable. I stopped mourning. I started thinking. She'd erased me from her life, but not from her mistakes. And that LLC she used to embezzle the money? Aurora Digital Consulting? That was the first thread I pulled. And soon, the whole thing would unravel. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But mine needed to be frozen, dissected, and reconstructed. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum online or send some bitter email Amanda could laugh at over wine with her new fiancé. No. This had to be professional, patient, surgical. Amanda ruined my life because I trusted her. So now I would destroy hers, because I know her better than she thinks. She left behind more than she realized. Passwords. Patterns. Pride. Step 1 was digital reconnaissance. I started with her laptop. She'd taken mine, but forgot to log out of the shared Google account we once used for household bills. It gave me access to a treasure trove, her old emails, her Dropbox, and more importantly, her calendar. I knew where she'd be, when she'd be there, and who she'd be meeting. She was still operating like the world was hers. Good. That made her predictable. Amanda had always worked freelance in the high-end executive recruiting world. She prided herself on vetting talent for Fortune 500 clients. That meant NDAs, fragile reputations, and skeletons behind every boardroom door. And she thought I didn't pay attention. She'd once mentioned her biggest contract, Glenmore Capital, a private equity firm with a reputation for, let's just say, selective discretion. One leaked scandal and they'd burn her faster than they hired her. They paid her 6 figures to place C-suite executives with squeaky clean profiles. One compromised referral, and she'd be radioactive. So I went looking for dirt. Not on her clients. On her. And I found it. In the Dropbox. There was a video. A private Zoom call Amanda had recorded without consent, bragging to her friend about how she manipulated a candidate into sharing confidential data during a personality screening. She called it emotional leverage. Smirked. Even said, "You'd be amazed how much men give up when they think you believe in them." I downloaded it. Twice. Then I checked the timestamps, 6 months ago. While she was working with Glenmore. That was my hook. But I needed more than exposure. I wanted her to watch everything fall apart. One thread at a time. Step 2, social re-entry. I'd been ghosting everyone since the betrayal. Friends. Colleagues. My LinkedIn account has been quiet. But now I cleaned up my profile. Brushed off old connections. Made a few polite comments on industry posts. People started noticing. Asking if I was back in consulting. I said yes. But what I really needed was someone inside Glenmore. I found him, Jared Ames, a senior analyst. 2 mutual connections. We'd met once at a tech boot camp years ago. I reached out. "Hey, man. It's been a long time. Heard Glenmore's expansion. Need any consultants to streamline back-end systems?" He replied in under 10 minutes. 3 Zoom calls later, I was helping his team optimize client feedback protocols. Nothing major, just freelance work. But it gave me access. Visibility. And then, one golden thread, during a file audit, I found Amanda's recruiting firm listed under a restricted vendor code. That meant internal review. She'd already pissed someone off. I didn't have to start the fire, just pour gasoline. I uploaded the incriminating Zoom call to an encrypted server. Then I drafted an anonymous internal memo, meticulously formatted to match Glenmore's internal whistleblower style. I included a fabricated IP source routed through a VPN in Portland. I used AI to distort the metadata on the video. It looked real. Clean. Untouchable. I titled it, Urgent, Conflict of Interest Involving Vendor Number 9937, Risk to Compliance Standards. It took 2 days. Then the hammer dropped. She didn't know it was me, not yet. But I heard from Jared that Glenmore had cut ties with her agency, indefinitely pending investigation. She was blacklisted across their legal network. Reputation. Fragile. And now fractured. But that wasn't enough. I needed to take her money. Not directly, not like she did me. But make her spend it. Bleed it. Burn it. Step 3, the lawsuit. Remember that lawyer who said I didn't have a case? He was wrong. I just needed a different angle. So I filed a civil suit for fraudulent inducement and emotional distress. I claimed Amanda manipulated me into cohabitating and jointly investing under false pretenses. My PI, who I hired once I got some freelance gigs rolling, dug up her old NDA settlements. 2 ex-boyfriends. Settlements that proved a pattern of coercion. That was the key. Pattern of behavior. Suddenly, I wasn't some bitter ex. I was a whistleblower against a serial manipulator. Amanda lawyered up, of course. Daddy's money, as expected. But civil suits like this don't need criminal proof, they need discovery. And once we got into that phase, she panicked. Emails. Texts. Recordings. Things I kept, things I found. It all painted a picture. A woman who used relationships to extract financial benefit and discard when inconvenient. She offered a private settlement. I declined. She upped the offer. I declined again. She looked me in the eyes during mediation, her lawyer sweating, and said, "What do you want?" I smiled. "Just to watch you lose." I spent 6 weeks planning it. I didn't rush. When someone kicks you while you're bleeding on a hospital bed, you don't rush justice, you sharpen it slowly, until it cuts clean. Amanda thought she knew who I was, a stable guy, no edge, no teeth. She didn't know I'd once written fraud detection software for a financial security firm. She didn't know I still had access to certain archived data streams, completely legal, mind you, just not something I advertised anymore. First, I tracked her. Through the LLC she dissolved, I found the accountant who helped her set it up, Michael Dorset. I scheduled a fake consult using a burner identity, posing as a startup founder looking to set up offshore accounts. 10 minutes into our conversation, I had everything I needed. Michael was reckless, sloppy even, especially when he believed he was talking to someone with capital. He let it slip that Amanda was now going by Amanda Fox in Miami, and had transferred her consulting business under the new name. New image. Same tactics. Then came the bait. I created a fake startup, Heliosphere AI. Polished website, phony LinkedIn presence, and even fake news mentions written with help from a journalist friend who owed me a favor. I played the role of its chief tech officer. We were looking for a high-end, high-impact executive recruiter, and Amanda was the perfect candidate. I reached out to her using a fake Gmail alias and an Eastern Seaboard phone number routed through a voice modulator. Told her I'd seen her impressive recruiting history, which she had conveniently inflated online, and our investors were eager to scale with someone who had C-suite reach and a disruptive mindset. Amanda took the bait within 2 hours. We scheduled a Zoom call. She appeared on screen in a designer blazer, hair pulled tight, voice slick and confident. "I'm intrigued," she said, tilting her head like she always did when she was performing curiously. "But you understand I only work as a retainer now." "Of course," I said, using a slightly altered voice. "Heliosphere is happy to pay for talent. We just need a little due diligence on your end first. A background verification, light compliance protocols. Standard stuff." She smiled like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Send me the NDA and the compliance packet. I'll review." What I sent her wasn't standard. The compliance packet was real, just altered. Buried inside the 23-page document were data tracking permissions that gave me legal access to any account she logged into while opening or uploading the form. Cookies, IPs, metadata, all routed back to a secure analytics dashboard I'd built weeks prior. She signed it the same day. By the end of that week, I had a complete record of her digital footprint, including 2 emails linked to bank credentials and login times, 1 offshore account, and another tied to her new shell company in Florida. I handed it all over to a class action attorney who specialized in white-collar partner abuse cases. Turns out, I wasn't the only one Amanda had dismantled. 3 others had stories eerily like mine. I had receipts. They had heartbreak. Together, we had leverage. We filed a suit, not criminal, but civil. We didn't need to win. We just needed to threaten. The lawsuit hit her 2 days before she was scheduled to speak at a high-profile Women in Tech conference in Miami. She had branded herself as a self-made talent innovator. The headline she woke up to: Executive recruiter Amanda Fox sued for pattern of financial misconduct and romantic coercion. Every single sponsor pulled out. Her name trended on X within hours. One of the other victims had written a powerful blog that went viral, titled, "I was her ATM, not her partner." But I wasn't done. I contacted Amanda's father, using my real name this time. Left a voicemail. "Just thought you should know what your daughter did to me while I was unconscious in a hospital bed. Hope your legacy brand doesn't suffer." 2 hours later, I got a call back from his lawyer. Threats, bluffs, veiled legal jargon. I let them talk. What mattered is Amanda was now radioactive. Within a week, she was dropped from every retained client roster. Her LinkedIn was deleted. Her social media went silent. A private message came in 2 weeks later from an unknown number. "Why are you doing this? Haven't you punished me enough?" I didn't respond. Because this wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about clarity. One final move remained. Using the analytics data, I found her remaining savings account, one she thought was untouchable. I didn't hack it. I didn't need to. I flagged it to the SEC under anonymous whistleblower credentials for potential fraud related to her past LLC's laundering patterns. 2 weeks later, it was frozen pending investigation. That same month, my story ran in a niche online magazine, The Engineer Who Got Even. My face wasn't shown, but my words were there. Every ounce of betrayal, rage, and triumph, I told it all. People started reaching out. Not just victims, but survivors. Women and men who had been manipulated, drained, abandoned. I replied to each one. Amanda didn't just lose her money. She lost her identity. No conference invites. No social clout. No network. She went from branded luxury events to a footnote in legal documents and Reddit threads. And me? I got a new job, remote, 6 figures, flexible hours. I moved into a better apartment. Rebuilt my savings. But more than that, I got my name back. No longer Amanda's ex. No longer the guy who got robbed. I became the man who refused to stay broken. I didn't think I'd feel anything when I saw her face on the news. The headline read, "Top recruiter caught in fraud scandal. Clients demand millions in restitution." Amanda's company, the one she rebuilt after vanishing with my money, had imploded. The forged contracts I exposed, the hidden NDAs I anonymously leaked, the whistleblower tip I submitted to the IRS, it all detonated at once. I watched the clip again. She was being escorted out of her downtown office building, surrounded by cameras, her mouth tight, eyes darting like she couldn't believe the spotlight wasn't flattering this time. I didn't smile. I didn't scream. I just exhaled. It wasn't a triumph. It was released. Amanda's world had been built on perception, on how polished she looked walking into 5-star lobbies, on how much better she could seem than the man standing next to her. But perception only holds until someone shines a light behind the curtain. And I had. The money. I never recovered it. That's the part nobody tells you about revenge, it doesn't always come with reimbursement. But what I did get was something harder to earn. Peace. I moved out of Philadelphia. Got a small house near Harrisburg, cheaper, quieter. I still work in consulting, but now I pick my clients. I take breaks. I cook. I even adopted a rescue dog, one of those mutts with a crooked ear and a grin like he's been through some shit too. Sometimes people ask if I'm dating again. The truth? I'm learning how to be whole first. Amanda took more than money. She took the version of me that believed love was something I had to prove I deserved. She made me feel like a burden when I was at my weakest. And for a long time, I blamed myself, thought I was stupid, soft, disposable. But I've come to see it differently now. What Amanda did was a kind of violence. Not with fists, but with charm. With strategy. With cruelty disguised as compatibility. She weaponized trust. She built a narrative around my value being just low enough for her to seem generous. But now I understand, being good to someone isn't naivety. It's strength. It's courage. And when people weaponize that goodness, it says everything about them, not about the person they exploit. So, no, I don't need Amanda to apologize. I don't even want it. Her downfall wasn't about getting even. It was about balance. About restoring something in the world that her power had corrupted. She lost clients. Reputation. And maybe, for once, she saw herself the way she saw me at the hospital, helpless. But unlike her, I didn't walk away from myself. I rebuilt it. Every day now feels like a quiet declaration, I survived someone trying to erase me, and I came back louder in the silence. And if Amanda ever thinks of me again, maybe when she sees my name attached to the exposé that cracked her fraud case, I hope she remembers not what she took, but what she couldn't keep.